there are efforts to literally remove homeless encampments. And you've actually seen images of bulldozers and like literally ripping out tents. And it'll just feel like, gosh, what are we doing? Because these are people. Here's what I'm just going to offer as a Catholic practical pastoral response. Welcome to the Father Leo Show, where I am dishing out faith, culture, and commentary. In this episode, we're going to try to determine what's a good Catholic response to the federalizing of the D.C. police force and bringing in the National Guard to, as Trump would want, clean up the streets in Washington, D.C. Is this something that a Catholic can get behind, or is there an overreach in turning the nation's capital into a dictatorship of sorts? Well, we're going to jump into it and not making this political, but truly trying to understand the justice principles of our Catholic faith as it applies to dealing with things like crime, with homelessness, because guess what? We as Catholics have to deal with it as well. So we're going to jump right into it. But before we do, please make sure you like, subscribe, share, and comment. Please know that your engagement, your comments, your sharing, and even just clicking the like button helps us to overcome the algorithms that want to suppress good, balanced, Catholic, pastoral, and practical responses to the things that this world is talking about. And we're definitely talking about this. And the only way we can do a channel like this is with your support. Please go to patreon.com/thefatherleo show. You can support us at any level. You get access to some great content as well as some special perks. So let's just jump right into it and let's try to figure out, how are Catholics supposed to take this seemingly difficult decision? Is it a disciplined decision, or is it dictatorship? Let's find out. If you were to watch mainstream media or even just scroll through social media, you are going to see a ton of voices and pundits and even riots, and all in response to President Trump trying to clean up DC. Well, we know that the crime, according to the statistics, that DC in the year 2025 is down 30% in violent crimes. But what was it down from? Well, it was a pretty significant number, because it ranked DC as one of the 4th deadliest cities in the nation. And that's saying something, especially since it is the nation's capital and people are flocking to DC all the time. I have many friends, and I used to work in the DC area, and I even lived there for a year. And I can say that from the time I lived there to now, it has changed. As in most cities, they do change, and sadly, it becomes a little degenerate. Now, I'm not going to give you necessarily my opinion. I am going to offer some pastoral commentary. And once again, please don't think I'm for or against President Trump. This actually has nothing to do with him. In fact, maybe this would be a good lesson. If we were to literally take his name out of the picture and just put in any other name, would people react the same way? Well, I think that some would, because I think people are jarred with the presence of military doing the work of police. But the problem is that the police force in DC in the recent years has declined in numbers. So there are less people wanting to be police in the DC area. In the same way, just a year ago, there were real problems in the military achieving their quota. They're supposed to get a certain number of people every year, and they have been in great decline until just recently, since the last election. In fact, all of the military branches are saying that their expectations of new recruits is higher. So, is there politics at play? I do think that's the case. But what I want to do is just try to look at this in a very balanced perspective, because I'm seeing some confusion. And what we're going to try and understand is getting to the point of people's arguments for and against. But let's go right now to something that is really close to me. And I want to just play something from a local news reporter talking about the local businesses, particularly a restaurant. Check this out.
Well, since President Trump has officially deployed the National Guard here in Washington, D.C., I took a look at some of the restaurants on Vermont and L Street who said that this new restaurant, Gaia, has seen a slew of car break-ins right here on this street. And the chef of that restaurant, which opened in April, says that some of their staff workers have actually quit working here because after they get off of work, they come outside. They said that they've seen attackers oftentimes circling the block to see which cars they can target. They say that with this National Guard move, they're hopeful to see if the city can get safe again.
Right. So they definitely do that side of the street.
Over there.
Yeah, over there, they definitely do that side of the street. Right here in the beginning, you'll see like glass on the ground up here.
Sammy Davis, a popular head chef and restaurant owner, says the crime near Gaia has become out of control.
Out here, you'll come on any given day and see like glass out here. And they do the whole street. So they'll break into every car on this side of the street or that side of the street. But the crime has really been the thing.
Davis says guests and even staff members have had their cars broken into, some guests reaching out to the club managers about the attacks.
And when that happened, when you get that kind of reputation, people will stay away from the business. You know, it runs people off because nobody wants to go out for dinner and spend a certain amount of money and then come out and now you got to put a $300 window in your car, you know, on top of probably towing it.
And that's 100% true. I'm going to just give you my experience of having a restaurant space in Baltimore's downtown Little Italy. This restaurant space is connected to an alley, which just connects to two other businesses. And so my building space is shared with a few others. And there was, when we first moved in, a homeless person, an unhoused person is what they're called. Homeless, I'm not quite sure why we have to make all these political distinctions. At one point it was considered homeless. Now we're almost forced by social norms to say unhoused person. Lived there and left all their stuff there. And so when we took hold of the building, we had to go in front of not just one, but two boards. The second board was honestly just a bunch of local people who honestly were some of the most challenging people I've ever met in my entire life. And they accused me of trying to run a soup kitchen from the restaurant space because they know we support the community by hiring people coming out of the prison system. And yes, we do feed people, but we don't have a homeless shelter. Tried to explain that to them, and they got irate because they honestly thought that I was going to bring more homeless people. And I kept trying to tell them, no, you don't understand. We're trying to fill this space, and this is key. We're trying to fill this empty restaurant space with good things, because if you don't fill it with good things, it can easily be filled with bad things. Okay, that is key. And I need you to just understand that. If you do not occupy a place with good things, it will be filled with bad things. Let me just give you a scriptural example. Do you remember in the Gospels where Jesus talks about, you cleaned the house with one demon, you swept it clean. But because it remained empty, 7 more demons, more ferocious than the first, occupied it. And Jesus was basically trying to tell us that if someone wants to break into your house, but they know that the master of the house is there, then they're not going to want to break into that house. So this is at least where our faith helps us as Catholics to try to figure out a basic response to growing problems we see of degeneracy in a lot of big cities. There has just been a general decline. If you were to take pictures of any city over the years, you're going to see how people at one point were cultured, they were well dressed. Some will say, oh yeah, but they're all racist, because you see just so many different white people and you don't see people of different nationalities. And that might be true to a degree, but I've seen even cities in like the 60s after the civil rights, and the civil rights successfully integrated people of different cultures. And guess what? Those cities were clean. But you see degeneracy, a breakdown in society, to the point where you will have people claim that by trying to federalize the local police and bringing in the National Guard, that we're creating a dictatorship. And so here is some of the protesting that we see from people. And what clearly you're going to notice is, let's just see if you notice it. Check this out.
These are homeless people. You guys are f***ing don't let them do this to you. It's abusive to you, and now you are going to get, when you're f***ed up, and you have to go to the VA, and they cut all your services. Refuse now. Do not do this. You have the obligation to refuse unlawful orders. Okay?
Okay, so there's one example of perhaps a local DC resident just basically shaming the National Guard for being there, and obviously very, very upset. And then I'm going to just show you another example, and please forgive the language. Just please forgive the language. It's just it's a sad thing, but this is just part of it.
Get off our streets! Get off our streets! Get off our streets! Why are you here? You're trying to arrest innocent people? What's your purpose? What's your goal? What's the motive? Why won't you show your face? Like you look yourself in the mirror and think I did a good job today?
Okay, so what you see here are two examples of people rioting and protesting, and there are two separate issues. One is the presence of the National Guard to enforce policing, and that is to apparently get rid of criminals. And then there is another issue of ICE, the Immigration and Custom and Border Patrol Agency, and they're there to basically remove anyone who is undocumented. And, you know, the Catholic Church will always stand with all people because of their endowed dignity and the presence of God dwelling them, whether they are documented or undocumented. In this case, it is up to local and federal laws. And yeah, we as the Catholic Church have to abide by that. We as a Catholic community cannot actually hire people who do not have proper papers. But we can and have done and continue to and will always do what we can to treat people with dignity and respect. So that is just full stop. You just have to know that. This is not about politics. This is about a Catholic response to it all. But what did you notice in all of that? What you'll notice is the shaming. People will want to shame anyone who is just trying to, shame those police officers as well as border patrol agencies or immigration and customs officials, and then also shame the National Guard. Try to make them feel guilty for doing their job. However, those same people who are kind of shaming this particular action are the same people who applauded when the local police arrested some regular resident because during COVID they were not 6 feet apart, or they didn't wear a mask, or they didn't present vaccination cards before entering into a grocery store. So I'm here to say that the weaponization of military and police has been and can be done. We just have to take note of that. Okay, so we just know that both sides can weaponize the police force. And this is a very, very dangerous thing. But is that happening in this case? Because as you see people who are incredibly vehemently opposed to it, my gosh, I mean, if you were to even just take a listen to what the DC mayor claims, you know, in a recent post on social media, this current mayor in DC has basically accused President Trump of being authoritarian push as the National Guard troops flood the Capitol. So this is Mayor Muriel Bowser criticized Trump's ambitious crime crackdown on last Tuesday while fielding questions from a citizen during a town hall, and basically accusing him of being like a dictator. Is that the case, though? Well, I mean, it's to the point where if you think that that's the case, then you can do anything you want to these people and think that it's okay. Like you can do anything against police officers and think it's okay. So let me give you an example of that. This is from a news station, and just watch this.
Tonight, Sean Dunn accused of attacking a federal officer with a foot-long Subway sandwich similar to this one right here at 14th and U this past weekend. And it's all caught on camera.
You see these fascists right here?
Fascists?
You!
Take a look at this cell phone video from late Sunday night. 37-year-old Sean Dunn, shown in the pink shirt and shorts, allegedly yelling at federal officers on 14th Street in D.C.
Y'all laughing, but that's the truth though.
Moments later, video appearing to show him crossing the street, screaming just inches from a U.S. Customs and Border Protection officer's face.
Hey, Dad, let's go get him, bro.
And then appearing to hit the officer in the chest with a foot-long Subway sandwich. Officers immediately chasing Dunn in the street and eventually catch and arrest him.
And you will know, however, that this is a man named Sean Dunn, 37-year-old employee, actually former employee of the Justice Department. He actually worked as an international affairs specialist. So he actually worked for the Department of Justice, but he acted quite unjust. So I just want to try to get a picture of who actually really rejects this effort for the cleanup. Well, I think that there are going to be some people who have politicized justice. I know that that's going to surprise you, but you got to remember that justice is actually a Catholic principle. I mean, we just have to know that it's rooted in the common sense of common good laws. And we just have to understand that our catechism talks very specifically about how we have the right not only to defend ourselves, but the right to expect that we can live in a just society. And so this Department of Justice employee seemed to be quite dramatic. And I would even use the word petty, throwing food at someone with whom you disagree. And it was caught on camera. Up to that point, he was yelling and screaming, finger in the face, getting close to the officer. The officer did nothing. But it was only until you actually create the crime by throwing something at them, spitting at them, just getting too close or pushing and shoving. And we've seen this kind of bullyish behavior of pettiness, which is why I just need to show that there is another side to the story. And here's what I've discovered, that not everybody agrees with this former justice employee officer, including this person here. Check this out.
Are you from the area of D.C. or are you a tourist?
Born and raised.
So you're born and raised in D.C. Are you here are you working in the area or just tourists right now?
Not far from here.
Where do you, if you don't have to tell me, but where do you work?
I work at a law firm
So you're an attorney?
No, but I assist.
Oh, cool. So what are your thoughts? Today we're talking about D.C. crime rates. Is it safe to live in D.C.? Do you agree with President Trump federalizing for 30 days to sort of stamp down on crime? What are your thoughts?
I agree with it. I was born and raised in the district, and I've never seen the things that I see today with children as young as 3 years old being shot. I mean, where does that happen? I think it's a bad idea to fear what this president is doing. I mean, he actually lives in the city now. I mean, come on. He would be foolish, I think, to ignore things like that. A child, 3 years old, being shot, or people being shot on the bus. I mean, that happened in upper Northwest Washington, D.C. So, I mean, yeah, I think I agree.
People in upper Northwest and like the areas, because it's hard finding actual DC residents here in this area. Mm-hmm. It's mostly like bureaucrats and whatnot. It's not the real DC people. Yeah. Do they generally support this? Do they feel like they want crime to be under control, or are they against it?
I do. I believe that most people that live here, that work hard every day and have families, they want the crime rate to be brought under control.
There you hear it. They want the crime rate to be under control. This is kind of important. And why? Because I just think that, again, if there was any other person that didn't have an orange color tan on his face with a red hat and just 4 letters making this proclamation, as what they would call it, or an executive order, would people react so violently? I don't know, but I don't think so. But I think we're at the point where we have just demonized the other. But for Catholics, we also cannot demonize the people whose lives are going to be affected by this more disciplined sweep with the police. And that includes people who are living, unfortunately, without any place to call their own. And therefore they have to live in tents. They're called the unhoused, the homeless population. And so what I think we need to try to understand is, what exactly are we trying to do with the homeless people? And so what I've got to try to do is just kind of hear it straight from, the source. And this is going to come from the White House press secretary, and explaining what's happening to the homeless people and why. Because this is part of who we are as Catholics. We can talk about compassion all we want, but we eventually have to show it and do it. But the Catholic Church does not exist to be a department extension of social services. We do social justice, but we do not have the capacity. It's maybe not everyone who is Catholic our expertise to do social justice. Now, I'm grateful that we as Catholics lead the charge in caring for our unfortunate brothers and sisters in Christ. But here's what these sweeping efforts are trying to do, and this is from the press secretary herself.
Regarding the president's efforts in Washington, D.C., do you have any specifics about how homeless people will be dealt with, where they would be moved to? What does this look like?
I do, yes, and it's an important question, so thank you for raising it. The Metropolitan Police Department, with the support of the new federal agencies who have been surging on the streets of the District of Columbia, are going to enforce the laws that are already on the books here in Washington, D.C. For far too long, these laws have been completely ignored, and the homelessness problem has ravaged the city. So D.C. Code 22-1307 and D.C. Municipal Regulation 24-100 give the Metropolitan Police Department the authority to take action when it comes to homeless encampments. So homeless individuals will be given the option to leave their encampment, to be taken to a homeless shelter, to be offered addiction or mental health services, and if they refuse, they will be susceptible to fines or to jail time. We also want to make DC safe and beautiful, and that involves removing mentally disturbed individuals in homeless encampments as well.
He had talked in one of his social media posts about moving them very far outside of the city. Is that off?
No, it's not off. We're exploring how we could do that. But again, homeless shelters, offered addiction and mental health services, or jail if they refuse are the options on the table right now. And we'll continue to explore that option.
Okay, so there you hear it. They are trying to actually address the painful problem of addiction, of mental health problems. And these are things, again, that the Catholic Church can and should be grateful for, because far too long has this part of society been ignored. Now, I'm even just going to confess, as a Catholic priest who does a lot of social justice work, I distribute food to the poor on a regular basis with our team, and it's not easy to deal with this population because I can give them a sandwich and maybe I can sit and eat with them. I've done that a few times, but I don't have the physical capacity or knowledge on how to help them. I also don't have the money to do it. I can do what I can at the moment. This is where actually the monies that we pay in taxes should go to help this population. But it's really about an attitude and a behavior that has to begin when we're just not so quick to hate. And I'm going to just say it again. It has to change our attitudes, and our attitudes change our behavior, which requires us not to respond to everything that we hear in the news with hate. Because I'm going to show you a little video of somebody who is just doing some, what I call basic journalism, and asking actually homeless people what their thoughts are. And this is coming from a popular social media guy named Nick Shirley. Listen to what he has to say.
They could have came by and taken the homeless people off like the news has been saying, but no, they arrested the guy that was selling the drugs to the homeless people. Have they came by and tried to take you guys off the streets? They've been respectful. Wow, that's good to hear, because they just took off a drug dealer from the streets.
That's all they want. All they want is the drug dealers off the street and the people who dying. That's all they want.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want. They're not trying to fuck with the homeless. They want the drug dealers and the guns off the street.
Yeah.
You can't tell everybody that, but they already wanted the guns and the drugs. They already found that out. They came to jump out the same way. All they want is the guns and the drugs off the street.
So what have the law enforcement said to you guys coming through here? Because that lady just came here, she was yelling at the police, but meanwhile we just saw them arrest a drug dealer. And she's yelling saying they're taking away the homeless people.
They didn't say anything. They walked by respectfully. They didn't give anybody any issues. I don't have a problem with law enforcement.
And should people be angry that they just took a drug dealer off the street?
No, it shouldn't be. I'm happy that DC is being cleaned up. And I'm not going to blame it on racism or anything.
Did that lady wake you up?
Of course, it's a disturbance because she was provoking on purpose. And, you know, you always got people out here, they say they're for a cause, but I mean, it's almost 11 o'clock at night. It's very peaceful. The police don't have sirens going or anything else, and they were just decently speaking with people, but there's always people that will try to cause a problem deliberately.
And there you go. Now, am I saying that everybody is experiencing that? Because there are efforts to literally remove homeless encampments. And you've actually seen images of bulldozers going into these kind of tree-covered areas, you know, in the middle of a park, and like literally ripping out tents. And it'll just feel like, gosh, what are we doing? Because these are people. So here's what I'm going to offer. Here's what I'm just going to offer as a Catholic practical pastoral response, because I don't think the church is actually looking at all of the issues or all of the media, because first of all, we just don't have that opportunity. That's why shows like this exist, to try to break it down so that we as Catholics can have a measured response and not be so reactionary. So the first thing I'm going to do is we need to think critically and make distinctions between people who are homeless and making sure we provide care for them, and correcting bad behavior. Sometimes caused by the homeless, but it's also sometimes caused by just reckless individuals who are out late at night. So the police force needs to correct bad behavior while providing compassionate and practical services for the homeless, and it does take money and a ton of resources to do that. Now, when it comes to the immigration and customs enforcement, this is a different distinction. And clearly, as Catholics, we want to stand with anybody who is seeking help because they are fleeing their country as asylum seekers or want to better their life. We should, as a Catholic Church, encourage governments and work with local churches to make sure that people in those countries are safe, and that if they truly want to immigrate, to not break any laws. I mean, I wish honestly that we could just get Pope Leo to simply make that distinction. But I think that it's such a hot button topic right now to encourage people to just be respectful of immigration laws. To say that out loud can sometimes put you with a bullseye, because it makes you think that you're anti-immigrant. But please know, I am an immigrant. And so I am encouraging people to make that distinction, treat everyone with compassion. The other thing we have to do is not make judgments on just what you see, because social media, depending on what you've looked at and liked and spent more time on, that's picking up your algorithms and just constantly pushing in one narrative over the other. So I have to, with my team, literally find both sides of the story in order to get some perspective. And what I've discovered is the media is flooded media is flooded with people protesting, and also on the protesting side, just foul language and a lot of pettiness. It's almost like they need to stand for something. But then on the other side of the issue, there are people who are incredibly grateful that their city is getting cleaned up, that they can actually walk streets and not have to kind of go completely out of the way because they don't want to be panhandled to or be accosted or park your car there and realize it's just someone's going to break your window. Because I have had that happen twice being in the city. That's happened to me. And I didn't even have, I'm smart enough that I don't put anything in my car. But nope, they just broke the window anyway. And it's frustrating. And it's just, you feel so violated. So I completely get that. The other thing too is to recognize that the government hasn't done a very good job and has to always rely on faith-based efforts. So I think that churches can do a much better job of providing compassionate services for those in emergency situation needs. But the churches have limited funds and may not have the expertise to do the counseling and the drug addiction and the advocacy work to get people in a more stable situation. And then finally, here's what I'm going to just recommend. Stay away from protests that want to demonize, name call, or invoke pettiness. Just stay away from all of those. Do not participate in that. It's just a mentality that will lead you down a rabbit hole of just increasing anger in you. Instead, spend more time in prayer, and not just any prayer. Pray for practical discernment. Pray for practical discernment. Ask God, what can you individually, what can you do to help the situation of, say, people who are homeless, people who are immigrants? What can you do? Because honestly, all the protesting isn't really going to do anything about it because it's not peaceful and it's not practical. It is just trying to be punitive and also petty. I think the best protests are the ones that include prayer. And that includes the March for Life. And now I even have to say the March for the Martyrs. You're going to have to learn about that, and maybe we're going to have to do an episode on that. But I just wanted to at least offer this to you because as soon as we just start calling every cop a bad person because he's trying to do, that cop is doing his or her job, stay away from that kind of rhetoric and that kind of illogical, brainwashed mentality. Now, are there some corrupt police officers? Oh yeah, there are, because there's corruption in humanity. But I think that the majority of people who are doing their job, whether it be federal or local police, they're really just trying to keep you safe. They really are. And so that's what I wanted to do, is just break this down for you, show you both sides of the story, and I certainly hope that this helps. Please make sure you like, subscribe, share, and comment. Let me know your thoughts. And as always, please know your support on patreon.com/thefatherleo show continues to help us to produce content so that we can talk about faith, culture, and with good, balanced, practical Catholic commentary. God bless you. God bless the people in D.C. God bless all of those who are affected, because we're all being affected somehow. And the only way that we can get through this is if we stay hungry for God.